the replay. I have a very special guest with me today. Welcome, Maria Kast.
Hello, glad to be here.
Yeah, I'm excited to dive into this because, me and Maria are all about leadership, and I always love to hear different perspectives and angles, and yeah, how we go about really making a difference in our business organization and our lives, really, to really take ourselves into that next evolution of who we are. And so let me just introduce a little bit about Maria. I'm just going to pull this up as I'm not going to pretend to memorize this. So Maria is a three times business owner, executive coach who's been helping executives and teams to eliminate this downhill thoughts and behaviors that keep them from achieving that vision that they are investing all this time and effort in. In 2019, she developed her proprietary process that teaches an intuitive yet structured approach for growing yourself, your team, and therefore your business. This process supports the mission of creating leaders who embrace personal evolution to build a more positive influence on their people and the communities in which they live. And so we definitely have that in common. This personal evolution business is, yeah, right down my alley too. And so, Maria, thanks again for being here. I really like to start off by asking, like a little bit about, what brought you on this journey doing what you're doing. I find that really allows people to, know you a little bit, from
Mhm.
just listening to what you have to say today.
Yeah, thanks for asking. It's interesting. I just had this conversation today with a new colleague, someone I met earlier this morning, and I was talking about how ever since I was a kid, I've always been very interested in personal growth. Always growing self-help, like all books like that, and experiences that would help me to just learn something new. I have definitely a growth mindset and always have had a growth mindset since I was a kid. But over the years, my father was a business owner, an entrepreneur here in upstate New York, which is where I'm from, Rochester.
Mm,
And in watching him lead his people, because I used to work in the summers, it was a mechanical contracting business, plumbing and pipe fitting and HVAC. And I worked for his company in the summers and witnessed him leading his people. And one thing that I always resonated with, and I it just really, it got into me, just by observing and being with him, is that he led with, like, he had open door policy, right? However, it was more that he would listen. Like, if you came into his office and there was a problem, like, he was a listener and he led really from the front. He was a wonderful leader, influencer, not only in his business but in our community. And so I witnessed all of that, and that's really where my thoughts of, you know what, I want to own a business, I want to lead people, that's where that started. That seed was planted for me. And so I just, as time went on, I, tried different businesses. One of my first businesses was in the mid 90s, and I had a organic, vegan, and gluten-free bakery, which
nice.
was well before this was even popular, right? And so, started with that, and then, kind of my journey into entrepreneurship and learning about leadership. And John Maxwell was someone that I followed and listened to and read his books. And when I saw that he had a certification program, I was like, I'm in. I want to be a certified coach with John Maxwell. So I got my certification and I started this business 8 years ago, really just using what I learned as a business owner, what I was taught and mentored through my dad, and then through my own certification in leadership. And yeah, and that's really what got me into it.
Well, how beautiful is that, that you had that
Yeah.
role model growing up, and then a
Yeah, it
leader
was
in the
great.
organic vegan field way back
Yeah.
when. So you were a leader
Yeah.
naturally to start. So yeah, that's beautiful. And so tell us a little bit about who exactly, specifically, do you support?
Yeah, so I support small and mid-sized businesses, so revenues from 5 million to 50 million, and I serve their teams. I work with the executives, and I have a coach who also works in my business who works with the emerging leaders. We have a mix of curriculum and coaching. So I have a curriculum that I teach, which is my core four process, which you mentioned in the bio. But there's an element to, because the individual piece, you can't just group coach and you can't just curriculum. You have to
Yeah.
have, in my world, in my map of the world, you really need to have the individual coaching to really gain traction in developing yourself and evolving yourself as a leader and as a human, really, when it comes down to it. So yeah, so that's, I serve executives and the leadership teams, and then the emerging leaders that are coming to fill up that bench of leadership within an organization as they grow.
Yeah, and that's a perfect balance of the leader and emerging leader because, they're going to take their place. You might as well grow together in that space.
Oh
So,
yeah,
yeah, I
yeah.
love that. And so these people that you work with, what are some of like the biggest challenges that you're seeing again and again? What are
Mm.
they struggling with? What are you supporting them in within that struggle? You know what I mean?
Yeah. So the biggest struggle I see is that they are in back to back meetings. Their calendars are packed. Their task list is never ending. They're just inundated with. They're on autopilot. They're inundated in the day to day of trying to scale the business or grow the business, and their people are suffering. The connection to the people are suffering, and their ability to lead and to think about how to lead well is suffering as well, because they just don't have the time. And so my solve to that is really using my core four process to say, hey, let's look at your current circumstances and where you are and where your team is and where your culture is and where your business is, and what needs to change for you to evolve to that next level where you have a connected culture of people that are inspired to work for you, that don't feel burned out, that don't feel overwhelmed. Because right now it's happening across the board in many, many businesses. And so that's really where I come in, is it has to start with the leadership. The
Yeah.
leadership has to start making the changes so that they can model it for their people, right? And connection to your people is paramount in succeeding in growing your business.
Yeah, that makes so much sense. It really starts from the top down, right? Like it doesn't
Mhm.
matter if people hire people, we hire people to change people at the lower part of the triangle of the organization, so to speak, but it never works that way. And I love, Maria, how you are, yeah, helping people not maybe forfeit what they had started their business for, their values, and being so busy that they're losing the important pieces of humanity. So I
Mhm.
love that, and I'm so glad you spoke about that because that really speaks a lot about you as a person, of the values, of the value of what you bring. And I'm curious, you brought this up a few times now, like this four-part process that you use. Can you
Yeah.
speak a little bit of a high level about what that is?
Yeah. I'm writing it down because you said something that I wanted to kind of tag on to there. You said that the reason that they got into building the business, and how in that busy culture they start to lose the culture. And the reason, like, imagine when you first start your business, everyone is like excited about the vision. They're developing the company, they're growing the company, and it's super exciting and everyone feels connected. And then as it grows and you bring more people on, you start to see where that culture is disintegrating.
Mhm.
And what I heard you say was that community feel and bringing that connection back, it's so important for, especially for those growing businesses, to understand that you really want to focus on keeping the integrity of the culture upon which your business was built on. Keep that inspiration going. So I really appreciate that you just kind of anchored that thought, because it's a very important. You cannot start at those lower levels. You have to
Mhm.
bring it back to the leadership and bring back that integrity of that culture. So thank you for anchoring that for us. It's so important.
Yeah.
And so I guess that leads into the core four process. So what I created over the past, really, I kind of saw the vision for it the first couple years in my business, which was about 6 years ago. And it's been tweaked and developed all along the way. But the core four process, I use the acronym of CORE, and we use the C as looking into, like I said, your current circumstances. What are the current circumstances that you are facing in your business or in your life or with your leadership? Like, what's happening? What are the current results you're getting? Let's look into those and use those
Hmm.
as the platform for your growth, like for where you need to go. Because when
Hmm.
you take personal responsibility and ownership for where you want to go, you have to look at what needs to change in you. And so we look at those current circumstances, the C, right, as okay, what needs to change in me to change these results that I'm currently facing? And then the O part is to observe self. And once you learn, okay, here's the circumstance I want to change, and here's how I know that I am the producer of that result and something needs to change in me. Like, I'll use an example, a more concrete example. Like if you're a leader who, when you get stressed out, you go into the blame game, right? Or you get so
Hmm.
stressed that you're just inundating your team with, emails and just frustrations, instead of calming down, responding rather than reacting. And you notice that and you're like, why isn't my team performing? Well, they're afraid of you, or they're miserable because you're a challenging leader, right? Your behaviors are
Hmm.
challenging, I should say.
Hmm. Hmm. Yeah.
Once you identify that, you then need to observe yourself. When you've made that awareness, observe yourself in every moment and think about, wait, there's something I need to change here. I don't want to respond. I know I've been triggered. I don't want to respond the way that I used to. I need to change as a leader to change the result and get my people on board
Hmm.
for developing this business and for growing this business. So it goes into observe self.
Hmm.
And that there's a huge piece of that where it's also observing yourself as you interact with your team members, right? Like, be present, pay attention to your team members, pay attention to the people in front of you. Whoops, almost lost my earbud here. And
You're.
then R is a relentless focus on
Mm.
making those changes. It's like you need to be relentlessly focused. You can't just be like, yeah, I'll like pay attention today, but not tomorrow. Like, you have got to dig in and be relentless to make those changes. And then E is in response to all of that piece of it, you're elevating your leadership. You're evolving as a leader. And when you evolve as a leader, your organization evolves along with you. So that's the process that I take people through, and there's a curriculum around it, but also, as I said, in individual coaching. I'm curious what you thought. Like, as I spoke about that, what just stemmed your curiosity in what I talked about, or what you relate to?
Yeah, like I mean, I was just thinking this whole process feels like a evolutionary process because it's exactly it, right? Being like seeing where you're at, looking at what within yourself, because we all know when there's things showing up outside of ourselves, it often points back to something within ourselves because that puts us back in a place of being in control, being responsible. Um, and I love that, and that's the only place change happens. So I love that, and that relentless focus is so true. Being able to come back to the present again and again, and to focus it, because our conditioning is very much running the show when we don't do that. So I really resonate with this, and definitely evolving, right? I mean, that's the last part, but I see that happening throughout the whole process. And so
Mhm.
yeah, I love it. I can see how this could really support yeah, chunked out support, and taking those small actions along the way, right?
Mhm.
um yeah, and so that's what comes up for me when you're sharing about all of this. It really is about changing the culture of you to support your dream, your vision, that you started this business for, this organization, and to keep connected and not be that challenging leader,
Mhm.
challenging behaviors held by the
Mhm.
leader, I
Yeah.
should say.
Yeah.
Like you
Yeah.
very very nicely yeah, wrap that up in summary. And so yeah, so what do you, when people go through this process, what type of change can they expect to see, or maybe a
Mm.
story about someone you've walked through this that really hit home at your heart for you, Maria?
Yeah. Yeah. I have many stories. I'll kind of just start talking and see what comes out. But the biggest thing is, I feel like all the leaders that I've worked with, when they become, so let me back up a little bit. I'm a coach who doesn't tell you what to do. And anyone who's a good coach is not going to tell you what to do. A coach is going to ask deeper questions, right? To help you uncover what you need to do or how you need to change. And so I think the biggest thing they experience is what I call connection to the inner coach. So I always guide people to really focus on tapping into their own inner coach for guidance, for understanding of where they need to change, for how do I handle this situation. And that comes with what it really boils down to, or what I would almost say like an umbrella, is paying attention. I always say when I talk about in my course, I say there's like an umbrella of this whole course that's all about just pay attention. If I could boil this down to anything, it would be that. Pay attention to your guidance, your internal guidance. Pay attention to your people. Pay attention to your circumstances so that you can respond in a more effective way. But so one of the biggest things that I see, or ideas that I see, that impacts leaders is in paying attention to themselves, they start to
Mhm.
have awarenesses of how they haven't been leading as well as they could,
Mm.
or they have awarenesses of how they're functioning that isn't optimal for leading their team to the results that they desire, right? And so that's the biggest thing, because I'm all about taking personal responsibility. I is one of my core values. It's a value that I ask of for the people I work with. It's taking personal responsibility to
Mhm.
make the changes that you need to make in your life and in your business. No more blame game, right? Look at what needs to change in you to change the results. And that really comes with having that awareness of, wow, wait a minute, I didn't realize that this way that I'm functioning is impacting my team in this way. And when they change that, when they start to be relentlessly focused on changing that, and it's
Mhm.
accountability of a coach, it shifts the entire culture of the organization. And people are achieving the goals with more ease. I say ease, it's not that it's easy, right? But they're building the business in a way that feels good, right? It's not their leaders are leading in a way that it feels good, they feel valued, and it's just a more cohesive and collaborative and connected team.
And does that interplay because you're teaching a similar system for everyone to tap into with the similar language with the
Yeah.
inner coach? Yeah,
Yeah.
beautiful. I love that.
Well,
Um,
yeah, and I encourage people to, when I teach my leaders, that the importance of inner coach time, and inner coach time can be, it can be moment. And I'm sure you resonate with this, Tammy, just in the field that you're in, and like what I hear you teaching as well, is inner coach time can be a moment where, ooh, you know what? I've got to go into this meeting. How do I want to show up? What kind of leader do I want to be? I want to make sure that, I don't get triggered, or how do I respond when I get triggered? Like, you just take a moment to like prep yourself. I call that inner coach time. Or inner coach time could be, an hour block in your calendar where you're completely focused on higher level thinking. Like, we have to improve this process. We're going to spend time, I'm spending time with my inner coach to identify some real powerful ways that we can change this process, or, have a new innovation within our business. And so I teach that to leaders, but I also encourage them to encourage their emerging leaders and their leadership team to do the same, because
mhm.
what you want is for it to be spoken throughout the entire organization, that it's not
Yeah.
just about packing your calendar and doing things. It's about really tapping into that inner coach time, and that own evolution of you learning how to evolve yourself.
Yeah, and it would be, how do you change a culture if you're, not doing the similar of something, So that makes a lot of sense. And I can see how tapping into, I don't know your process, of course, for tapping into your inner coach, but I imagine it's tapping to your intuition or
Mm-hmm.
something to that effect. And
Mm-hmm.
having like, maybe valuing other people's intuition that has come up. And what I've learned about intuition, anyways, is that it's different angles of similar things. And look at the power of that in an organization, right?
Yes. I love that. It's because if someone comes to you with an idea, just think about this for a minute, for all the leaders out there. If you're a leader in your organization, and one of your and inner coach time is like, it's spoken throughout the culture of your organization. and someone comes to you on your team and says, I had some inner coach time and I had this really amazing thought and innovation of something that we can do to move the business forward in a new and exciting way. Imagine how that feels as a leader. It's like if you are speaking that inner coach language and you're already doing it yourself, you know that this is something to really to trust or to at least consider and vet, that it's not just something that was thought of on the quick, but it was thought of with this real intentional time. So it's very exciting. It's exciting to see what comes out of that kind of talk.
Yeah, I love that. And I'm curious with this inner coach, is there an experience or a tip around it that you wanted to share today? Because I know you also have a gift, but is there something you wanted to walk the audience through right now, or you wanted to, yeah, share some other, I don't know, secret tip, anything to share with the audience that are listening?
Yeah, I appreciate that. So I would say that I'm going to kind of give the analogy that the inner coach. I talk about the inner coach as being the bridge of where you are now and where you want to go. So if you are a leader, CEO, or you're primarily responsible for growing the business, right? For influencing your teams to have a certain result in your business. I want you to think about this concept of, okay, the inner coach is my bridge from like where we are now to where we want to be. And the reason is because you use the inner coach. And when I talk about the inner coach, I guess it would be important to share how do you tap into the inner coach, right? That would be important. Like I can talk about the inner coach, but if you're like, well, yeah, but how do you get there? Um, because I do get that question,
Mm,
is I always share that whenever you're feeling, so I guess this is a good tip, whenever you're feeling just uncomfortable, right? Like you feel like you're stressed or you
mhm,
any
mhm.
kind of feeling that you don't want, or maybe you feel a lack of confidence, or you feel like you can't come up with the answer.
Okay.
Um, you know what? I'm going to give a story. Can I give a story on this one? Because it's
Yeah,
just amazing.
definitely. Just follow
Yeah,
your
and this
intuition, please.
I love it. I'm going to. It popped in. It popped in. The inner coach like dropped in. It's
Loved
just
it.
how that happens. So early on in my business, the first year of my business, of course, you know how it is. You're like hitting the pavement. You're doing the cold calls. You're trying to get yourself out there. You're at all the networking events. And I remember I was sitting at my computer, and we have something in our community it's called the Rochester Business Journal, and it's a list. It's the book of lists, and it's a list of all the companies in our community, all this data on the companies. And I remember opening that book, and I was literally going through all the women-owned businesses, and I was like
Mm,
checkboxing. I was picking up the phone. I was emailing the person, and I remember sitting there, and it felt icky. I was just like, I don't know, this just isn't feeling right, or I'm not feeling like this doesn't feel right to me.
okay.
And when I was feeling that strive or that not resonant feeling, I'm
Yeah.
like, what do I need to do right now? What do I need to do right now? And what dropped in for me when I just took that pause and turned away from my computer, the pause that came in was go sit on the couch, just go chill on the couch and just take a breather. So I went over, took the breather, and in those moments that I was sitting there, this idea dropped in. And the idea was it was like almost like a memory. It was a memory of a couple weeks before I had been in an event, and there was a woman on stage that was speaking. She was on a panel, and she's in our community. She's a business leader in our community, and she was sharing like her culture and how she developed her team. And I really resonated with her part of the presentation. And what dropped in is just send her a note. Just be authentically connecting with her and send her a note that you really value what she's offering in our community. And so I wrote the note with there was no sales pitch. It was just a, hey, saw you on the panel. Really appreciated what you shared. Sent it to her in the mail. It was a handwritten note. And about 2 weeks later, the HR director emailed me and said, we're vetting some coaches. We're interested in doing some leadership development for our team. We'd love for you to come in. and we'd like to meet you. And I ended up landing the client, and I had them for 3 years. And they were my first big client. So I give that example because the important piece of that is that whenever you're feeling um, like you're striving or you're having to push through or it just not right feelings, step
Hmm.
away and just tap in. It only takes a moment. You turn off the screens, no notifications, allow yourself to be open to the guidance of what I call the inner coach. Because what comes out of that time is often a very powerful idea.
I think that's beautiful. As you're telling your story, I got shivers in my body, Maria.
Ooh,
I love it.
that's good.
Yeah, and this is a place like when we're in the place of push and go, often, that's counterproductive of receiving our inner coach intuition, side of things, So I love that. I love how your intuition gave you step by step, like remove yourself, go on the couch, right?
Yeah,
And then getting the downloads, right? Yeah, and that's the language I use. I call it a download, but whatever,
yeah.
whatever that is for you. And that's the beauty. The beauty of this inner coach is that we don't need to actually push all the time. There is space between the appointments versus back to back to really,
Yeah.
yeah, create space actually for more ease. Not
Mhm.
be easy, but have more ease, like you mentioned earlier, right?
Yes, exactly. And you know what? When you do that as a leader, I know you've experienced this because you're in this work. We tell ourselves, and especially busy leaders who are running multi-million dollar companies, they tell themselves they don't have the time. Or their leadership says, well, I don't have the time to do that. But the reality is, if you made the time, even if it was in small chunks throughout the day, 5 minutes, right? 3 minutes, you will start to notice the results, how the results change for the more positive for you and your team and your organization. And then it just anchors the idea that, wait a minute, if I do more of this, I'll get even better. I'll get even better results, or I can move this forward. So, yeah, it's so important. So important.
Yeah. And as we wrap this up, is there anything else that you feel is left unsaid that would really, yeah, any last words, insights that you feel your intuition is guiding you to say? Or it could be nothing, but I just like to give the
Yeah.
space to wrap up, for you to share
Yeah.
anything that comes up.
Yeah, I appreciate that. So I think we said a lot. I guess what I would because it's really my mission in the mission for my business, but also just mission for my life is building more connected cultures within organizations. And so I feel like I need to like shout from the rooftops that really adopting this idea of not back-to-back meetings over, running lean, not taking time for higher level thinking. It's the most important thing that you can do in your business and for your culture and for your people is to make sure that you allow time for connection. Whether it's them connecting to their inner coach, whether it's them connecting to their team members, you connecting to your team members, really in a very meaningful way. And sometimes that's just, if you're in a manufacturing company, walking the floor and just to choose 2 days a week or one day a week and walk the floor and have a quick connection with the people that are on the line, right? Like
Mm,
that is the kind of stuff that really changes the culture within your business is having those meaningful connections. So I would just say if if you feel as if your organization is just always running, always on the go, trying to just build revenue and just completely continue to obviously develop the business and people are burning out or feeling overwhelmed or you're even feeling it, to absolutely start to stop, think about what you can do differently to bring a more
mm.
connected culture.
I love that. I love that, Maria. I think this is why, we resonate, that connection aspect of what we
Yeah,
care about. And what I feel called to say is just, very much like you're running a business and people invest with you based on know, like, and trust. And I feel like our employees, like people that work with us, our team is very much, they work, harder, with their heart in it when they know, like, and trust you and they can feel that connection. And
totally.
so, yeah, so it's so important. Thank you so much for bringing that perspective forward, Maria. And if people wanted to get a hold of you, Maria, where's the best place to get a hold of you?
Yeah, my happy place is LinkedIn. I'm on LinkedIn. My company is Core Leadership Development. So you can look me up on LinkedIn there, or Maria Kast. That's with a K, Kast. And if you want to come into my ecosystem, I would encourage you to. I shared with you, Tammy, that my inner coach guidebook. So if you're thinking about, what, I want to learn a little bit about this inner coach thing. I want to evolve myself as a leader. I have a whole guidebook to help you identify a vision for where it is you want to take your business or your team or your culture, right? Whatever goal you have, the vision you have,
Mm.
and takes you through steps on tapping into the inner coach to uncover who you need to become in order to reach that vision. So I just encourage you all to, download that as well, and have that as a tool in your toolbox.
Well, thank you for offering that. I love that because how many times that we do need to slow down and revisit our vision, and to be able to
Mhm.
have a process to allow that our intuition, our coach to guide us. How beautiful is that? So thank you for sharing that gift. I'll definitely post it underneath in the comments for everyone to tap into. And please, if you're in a space, right, that you're wanting to approach your leadership differently, inviting your own inner coach and changing culture and changing that, bringing back what your business meant to you and building more connection in your organization, please reach out to Maria Kast. Thank you so much, Maria, for being here today, sharing these perspectives. And yeah, I love to stay connected with you myself.
Thank you, Tammy. We certainly will. I appreciate you.